Sometimes the truth has a price. That may be the lesson of a Virginia police officer who says in trying to do the right thing, he ended up paying for it. Of one man who confronted truth and consequences.
This is the Truth and Consequences podcast with Doug Poppa. From Las Vegas, Nevada, this is episode 67 for Sunday, October 24th, 2021. Wednesday, October 27th, will mark 5 years since the bodies of Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman were found, both shot in the head, in their southwest Las Vegas apartment. The double homicide is unsolved to this day. Sex trafficking and allegations of corruption, negligence, incompetence, and a cover-up involving the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department surround the case. Many of you know that I've been investigating the events surrounding the Land Kauffman murders for well over 2.5 years, first reporting in numerous articles that were published by the Baltimore Post-Examiner, and starting in 2020 on my podcast, Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa. I reported that the integrity of the criminal investigation of the murders was compromised by both the Homicide Bureau of the Las Vegas Metro Police and former Las Vegas Justice Court Judge Melanie Andress-Tobiasson. The police failed to recover crucial evidence at the crime scene on October 8, 2016, when Shane Valentine shot into the occupied residence of Nehemiah Kauffman's mother after making threats against Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman. The police also failed to recover all the evidence at the double homicide scene on October 27, 2016, at the apartment of Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman. If you recall from my May 2018 interview with then-Judge Melanie Andress-Tobiasson, Tobiasson said she received confidential information about the murders from homicide detective Jared Grimmett, and that the police had all the evidence that indicated that the convicted felon and longtime Las Vegas pimp Shane Valentine, another pimp named Dominique Thompson, and convicted prostitute Frankie Zappia, the stepdaughter of a retired Las Vegas Metro police officer, were involved in the murders. Tobiasson alleged that there was a cover-up in the murders and that the police probably destroyed evidence in the case. Tobiasson also stated that on October 25, 2016, at approximately 4:30 p.m., she was outed by Las Vegas Metro Police Vice Detective Justine Gaddis as a confidential source of information to Las Vegas Metro Police Officer Clarence Ty Bowden and his daughter Allie. Tobiasson revealed in that interview with me that as a result of being outed by the police, that led to the murders of Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman, which Tobiasson said occurred at 12:30 a.m. on October 26, 2016, and that the wrong two people were murdered, that it was her and her daughter Sarah who were meant to be killed. Here is an audio clip of my interview with Tobiasson. At the end of that audio clip, I will play some news clips related to the Land Kauffman murders. The clips run consecutively, and then I will have some closing comments.
So they bring her in for an interview with her police officer father. First question out of Justine Gaddis's mouth. Do you know Sarah Tobiasson? Yes, I do. She's one of my best friends. Second statement out of Justine Gaddis's mouth. We got your name from her mom. She says you're working as a prostitute for a pimp by the name of Shane Valentine. I get the call from Van Cleef, who is beside himself. He goes, I don't know what to do. And I said, how about you get the fuck back in there and fix this? I go, she just put a fucking target on my daughter. I go, you think this guy's going to kill me? He's not going to kill me. He's going to kill my kid. I go, what is wrong with you people? I said, there is no way that this was an accident. I go, no vice detective, I don't care if they've been there for one day, would do that by accident. I go, this was intentional. So I bring my daughter and Allie to my house. I tell them, I go, you guys need to get to the house right now. You're not safe. So
you brought your daughter. You said you hang on. You said you brought your daughter and who to your house?
Allie, the daughter of the police officer that they had just outed me to. Van Cleef calls me back. He and Justine want to meet with me and my daughter, and I told them basically to, I won't tell you what I said, but it wasn't very nice. And I said, you guys have a reason for doing what you did, and I don't know what it is. I said, but if something happens to my daughter, we can have a real big fucking problem. So that night, unbeknownst to me at this time, Allie leaves my house and she puts out a tweet about the fact that she was called in and questioned by Vice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, unfortunately, at this point, Allie was no longer associated with Shane Valentine. She was associated with Neo Kauffman. And like I said, they had had a beef because Shane was upset that Neo was taking Shane's goals. So that night at about 12:30, so it would have been 12:30, October 26th, 12:30 a.m., Shane Valentine, the guy by the name of Dominique Thompson, he went by Domo, D-O-M-O, and a girl by the name of Frankie, F-R-A-N-K-I-E, Zappia, Z-A-P-P-I-A. Shane, Domo, and Frankie, whose stepdad is a police officer by the name of Dano, D-A-N-O, Giersdorf, G-I-E-R-S-D-O-R-S. Go to Neo's house and execute Neo and his girlfriend, Sydney Land. Dano,
Right.
D-A-N-O,
Right.
Giersdorf, is the stepfather of Frankie Zappia, one of the suspects in the double homicide that happened 8 hours after I was outed as a source of information to one of Shane Valentine's prostitutes who had left him and was now working for Neo. 8 hours later, her new pimp is killed by her old pimp because she puts out on Twitter that she had been called in and interviewed by Vice. They know, and everyone else knows, that this murder happened as a result of what they did that day.
So has anybody been indicted for this double murder?
No, that's what I just said. They're covering it up. And they know that the fact that they outed me got 2 people killed. They weren't the 2 people they were trying to get killed, me and my daughter, but it got 2 people killed.
Let me ask you-
I'll tell you, Joe does not want this story out there. They don't know that I know what evidence they have. Chances are they've destroyed it by now.
And right now, new details are coming in after police find 2 bodies in an apartment.
We are getting our first look at the couple found dead in an apartment. Police say the bodies were in the home near Wallapai and Peaceway for at least a day before anyone knew what happened.
Tonight, 2 families are coping with the heartbreaking discovery. 13 Action News reporter Masa Saidi is live near the area where friends gathered to remember that young couple. Masa.
Steve, Trisha, Neo was a talented basketball player. Sydney worked at the Palms at Caesars. You see some of the candles behind me. Friends and loved ones identified the couple to us. So many tears here tonight. No one was more touched than the victim's young sister.
Everybody loved her. She's so nice and so cool, and she's so sweet, and she just had the biggest heart ever.
Sydney Land was just 21 years old. Her boyfriend, Neo Kauffman, 20. Just hours ago, the couple was found dead. The door of their apartment open when a friend walked in. Neo was shot, found on the first floor. Sydney was upstairs. Detectives couldn't tell how she died. Tonight, police saying they believe both were victims of a homicide. Sydney was one of 4. We spoke with her mom here on the scene today. She actually raced to the apartment when she found out that something had happened. Her worst nightmare. We are still trying to get in touch with Neo's relatives.
New information on the 2 people found dead in a West Las Vegas apartment complex.
Our Faith Jesse is live near the scene at Hualapai and Flamingo where the 2 were discovered. Faith, what do we know so far?
Well, what we know is that Metro is still investigating what happened here at the Union Apartments. Now, we spotted a police car coming into the north side of the complex today around noon. Metro investigators telling us today that the 2 people killed, a male and female adult, were shot inside one of the units. Detectives responded to the scene yesterday around 12:30. They say a friend found the 2 victims after going to check on them after several days had passed without any contact. Police say the victims looked to be in their 20s and appeared to have been dead for several hours before they were found. Detectives say this does not look like a murder-suicide.
I believe there is going to be foul play. It does not look like a homicide-suicide on the initial look. I believe it's going to be a double homicide, but again, we still have a lot of work to do to come to that to get it definitive.
New information tonight on the shooting deaths of a young couple in their apartment this week near Wallapai and Flamingo. 13 Action News reporter David Schumann went to that apartment complex today to learn more about Neo Kauffman and Sydney Land.
Police say tonight they're looking for two men who could be suspects in the murders of young Neo Kauffman and Sydney Land. Neo was 20 years old, Sydney was 21. It's believed their bodies were in their apartment more than 24 hours before being discovered. Neighbors we spoke to today say they'd only lived there a few months and mostly kept to themselves. When we brought up the fact two men could be suspects in the killings, it didn't ring any bells with neighbors. They never saw anyone go in or out, they said.
And breaking right now, new information that could lead to answers in an unsolved double murder. Sydney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman were gunned down at their apartment near Wallapai and Peaceway last month. Right now, one man is in custody accused of threatening the couple just weeks before. According to a newly released arrest report, Shane Valentine shot up Kauffman's family home about 20 days before the murders. No one was injured in that shooting. Detectives have not named a suspect in this murder, but previously said they were seeking two men.
And we're hearing from a Valley mother who lost her daughter in a double homicide. Sydney Land was just 21 years old. 13 Action News reporter Masa Saidi just got back after speaking with Sydney's family for 2 hours tonight. Masa.
Trisha, this is a family that is very private. It was difficult for them to speak with us, but they did it because they want this case solved. Connie lost her daughter so many weeks ago, but she says Sydney is still with her.
You have her for a moment. Yeah. You feel it for a moment, and and the feeling will be overwhelming, or you'll feel this rush of like a tingling. I don't know how to describe it, Masa. It's like this enveloping love.
It started out violent and never slowed down. Good evening, I'm Marie Mortera.
And I'm Jim Snyder. We're talking about 2016. Last year, Metro Police logged 166 homicides, near a record for the department. And while the solve rate is high, some cases continue to haunt investigators.
In tonight's top story, News 3's Denise Ross takes a closer look at the death of a young couple killed in October and why police believe there will be justice for the families.
21-year-old daughter taken far too soon.
Words cannot describe the sadness and the pain and the frustration that I feel.
It's been nearly 4 months. October 27th, a man and woman found shot to death inside their apartment on Wallapai and Peace Way, later identified as 21-year-old Sydney Land and her boyfriend, 20-year-old Neo Kauffman, two of the 166 people murdered in Metro's jurisdiction last year. 3/4 of those cases are solved. This is one that eats at investigators.
This one was basically an execution, of two very young people.
Metro Homicide Lieutenant Dan McGrath.
Around 85% of our murders were involved with guns, and we have seen younger people.
Very quickly out of the gate, I wasn't going to question why, because you will never find an answer.
Connie says her daughter was, in a word, joy, the oldest of 4 children, a 2013 graduate of Centennial High School, fiercely loyal. Police say they do not believe she was the intended target, but rather a true victim. For Connie, the outcome is the same.
I go through her Instagram or her Facebook or something to hear her voice because I miss her voice. I miss her sounds. I miss hugging her. I miss telling her I love her.
Connie says memories of that awful day are seared in her memory. The panic, the police tape, the officer gently explaining she could not enter her daughter's apartment. Moving forward, she decided tragedy would not break her family.
Sydney would go, Mom, I want you to step up. You're strong. And make something good from this.
Connie says she's absolutely certain someone knows who killed Sydney and Neo, someone who so far has refused to come forward. And police agree, telling me this case is absolutely solvable. All they need is one brave soul to do the right thing.
There has been some, a lot of rumors on social media, but nothing we can actually move forward with on the case.
Her oldest child will never grow old, but she will always be a part of their lives.
A plea from a mother tonight to find her daughter's killer. Sydney Land was murdered in an apartment out near Wallapai and Peace Way last fall. News 3's Christy Wilcox has been talking with her mother, who is still desperate for answers.
Well, just an emotional plea today. This was a double murder that happened back in October. Lieutenant Dan McGrath of Homicide spoke to us and said her mother has been very persistent about finding her daughter's killer, and that's one of the reasons this press conference happened today.
She did not deserve to die the way she did. And so I'm asking people, please come forward with any information that you have.
As Connie Land stood at the microphone outside Metro headquarters, tears welled up in her eyes as she made an emotional plea. She wants to find her daughter's killer. Sydney Land died by gunpoint inside an apartment where she had been living near Hualapai and Flamingo in October last year. The case has gone cold, but her mother has not given up.
I'm grateful for this as a new beginning. Even though it's been frustrating, it's a new beginning for new possibilities.
Homicide detectives do not have a suspect at this point. With few leads on the trail of her killer or killers, the case has grown cold. Sydney was murdered alongside her boyfriend, 21-year-old Nehemiah Kauffman. Police say the two traveled in a tight-knit group of people.
The questions that I ask are why no one is willing to come forward. That's disheartening to me, because this crime is a solvable crime, and this murder is a completely solvable murder.
Police say Sydney was an innocent victim. There was no evidence of a break-in. Police think it's possible the killer was not a stranger.
Police tell us that these two were murdered execution style, and they did not recover any weapon. That's another reason to get this person off the streets.
She really loved kids and wanted to do something in the medical field with children.
All that suddenly changed when she hooked up with this guy, Nehemiah Kauffman, better known on the street as Neo. Sydney fell fast and hard for 20-year-old Neo, who cops say was actually living a shady life studded with petty crimes and brushes with the law.
He had been involved in some illicit activities such as burglaries and the sale of narcotics and things like that.
And that's not all. People close to Sydney say Neo was dabbling in the dangerous and sleazy world of sex trafficking, fashioning himself as a self-styled pimp.
It's apparent that a lot of his female friends that he may have also courted were being utilized in various manners related to prostitution.
Frankie was this frumpy, basic, nerdy kind of a girl, and her and Sydney were friends all throughout high school.
After graduation, the girls went their separate ways. But when they reconnected, Frankie had made a dramatic transformation. This woman knows Frankie, but does not want to show her face. We'll call her Kate. She says there was a reason for Frankie's dramatic transformation. She had become a prostitute.
911 emergency? What's going on there?
I walked into my friend's apartment and there's blood everywhere. And I just seen his feet on the ground, and I seen her body on the ground, and
So there's two people? Okay.
Yes.
They were laying down in the...
Yeah. And there's blood all over the wall.
A little after 12:30, Preston, my son, had called and he said, "Mom, have you talked to Sid?" And I go, "No, what's wrong?" And I could hear the anxiety in his voice. And I go, "She's dead, isn't she?" And he goes, "Oh, Mom, she's gone."
Connie tears across town to Sydney's apartment complex, on the way making her own desperate call to 911.
I just got a phone call that my daughter's dead in her apartment. And I haven't heard from her in a couple days.
Are you driving over there now?
Yeah.
But when Connie arrives at the apartment, cops won't let her in. Behind the walls of that apartment lay the blood-drenched bodies of Sydney and Neo, both shot in the head at close range.
Many things stood out. Lack of forced entry. Whoever was in the apartment with them appeared to be someone that they trusted. There were several items that contained DNA evidence. Now, the problem is these people had a lot of friends, a lot of associates, a lot of people that hung out at the apartment complex with them. So sorting through all the details of what was relevant and what's not has been a challenge.
Sydney was a perfect target because she was naive, she was trusting, she wasn't street smart.
I mean, you know, when I refer to DNA, I mean, there's cigarette butts everywhere and the ashtrays full of stuff. There's drink cups everywhere. So you talk about DNA being in the apartment, there's all kinds of stuff, you know. So who knows what was supposed to be there and what wasn't supposed to be there.
Cops quickly seized surveillance video trained on doorways of the apartment complex. It was of no use.
We went and reviewed hours and hours of footage looking. Unfortunately, there was nobody that we identified through the surveillance footage as a person of interest.
Adding to the challenge, who arrived first on the scene.
There was at least one person that came in there and found the bodies, and then comes back and reports it to law enforcement.
The cops say after he called, he then alerted friends on social media, an act that may have compromised their investigation.
When we're arriving there, a majority of these friends and even family members have already come to the apartment.
The last known person to see the couple alive was Sydney's best friend, Frankie, the girl Sydney grew up with, who is now working as a Las Vegas prostitute.
I know Frankie knows who did it.
Cops have not ruled out Frankie as a person of interest, and what detectives have gleaned from her and others pointed to a guy named Shane Valentine.
Everything looked like Shane Valentine may have been our guy.
And was revenge his motive? Cops say Valentine had a beef with Neo and had taken action before.
Shane Valentine actually went over to Neo's mother's house, fired around into the window, broke out a couple of windows and rammed his car into the parking garage door as he threatened to cause harm to Neo and his family.
The incident happened 3 weeks before the murders. Then damning evidence from the bloody night of the shooting surfaces.
They could ping his cell phone in the tower in that area about the time of the murder, and then he was in California the next morning.
Although it appears that he may not have been the shooter, the possibility remains that he was aware of what was going to happen or what was happened immediately thereafter.
Valentine was convicted and is doing time in Nevada for shooting up Neo's mom's house. He's still a person of interest, but cops are basically at square one.
I do believe that Frankie's pimp is the killer of Sydney Land.
This woman we're calling Kate does not want to show her face, but knows Frankie and Sydney. She believes the guy named Damo, also known on the streets as Frankie's pimp, is the shooter.
We're not going to really talk about Dominic, but I can tell you there's no rivalry or anything that I know of. I think Sydney and Neo were both preparing to leave for the evening.
Tracing the timeline, cops say on the last night of their lives, Neo and Sydney were planning to meet up with friends, but never made it out of the apartment.
I believe that based upon the interviews and stuff that were conducted, but the physical evidence, the way they were dressed, packing of the bags, it was all consistent with that. Phone records indicate that they had contacted a local hotel and casino to book a room.
Before heading out, there was a visitor, someone they willingly let into the apartment.
Again, I go back to the lack of forced entry into the apartment. They were inside the apartment with Neo and Sydney as they prepared to leave, and out of nowhere, they were shot.
Connie believes it was a planned hit, and other people in their group knew about it. She says the game plan was for friends to party at a club called Dre's, then head to Hotel Link for an after party.
Sydney had paid for the hotel, and she had sent a message to herself with the confirmation code about 11:45 on the 25th. But no one showed up at the hotel. No one called Sydney. No one texted, no one.
Connie believes no one showed because people knew the deadly plan was in motion, and Sydney was already dead.
A local mother is vowing she will never stop searching for her daughter's killer. She was murdered 2 years ago.
Alongside police officers, that mom spoke out today at Metro headquarters, and that's where we find News 3's Kendall Nunley live with this one. Kendall.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, you've probably seen the billboards, large photos of 19-year-old Sydney Land asking for anyone with information on this cold case to come forward. It is her mother who is behind those billboards, and it was here today where she made the promise to never give up on the search to find her daughter's killer.
I cannot fathom that someone would know information, that they don't come forward.
For Connie Land, the last 2 years have been anything but easy.
It's like carrying a weight of rocks. You carry it everywhere. The load, you're always aware. It's always in your mind. It's either in the back of the mind or your front of the mind, but it's always there.
Connie's 19-year-old daughter, Sydney, was shot and killed inside her apartment in October 2016. Her boyfriend, 21-year-old Neo Kauffman, was also murdered that day.
Do the right thing, reach out to us, and allow two grieving families the justice that they deserve.
The case has now gone cold, and Sydney's mother is not giving up. Thursday, she made it clear that she'll do whatever it takes to keep the search for the killer
in the headlines.
We've done billboards. We've done several billboards. We have done national news TV shows, crime shows. We've done press conferences. We are working on podcasts. Any social media, whatever we can do to keep this out there.
Investigators believe the shooter knew Sydney and Neo. It's information like that that drives her mother to take action.
That's what Sydney would expect me to do. That is the way that I get to honor her. We're not going away. We'll never go away, ever.
It was just 2 weeks ago that we showed you this billboard to help solve a double homicide gone cold for almost 2 years. Now police are asking anyone with information about the murders to come forward. 13 Action News reporter Tom George is out at one of the billboards around town. And Tom, you spoke with Cindy Land's mom.
Sydney Land's mom tells me even 2 years later, she's determined to find out who killed her daughter, even if it means posting billboards all around the city.
I would have never in a million years ever believed that this would have been our life and our family.
It's been nearly 2 years to the day that Connie Land lost the light of her life, her daughter Sydney.
She always saw the best in people.
But her mom says that trusting nature may have been her downfall. On October 27th, 2016, their worst fears came true. Sydney, along with boyfriend Nehemiah Kauffman, both found shot dead in an apartment near Wallapai and Peace.
I just kept praying that it wasn't her. And it was her.
Police say the killer or killers may have been let inside the apartment because there was no forced entry. Suspicion initially centered on Shane Valentine, who you can see here in this surveillance video from an unrelated crime, and who had a violent history against the Kauffman family. Police later ruled out Valentine as a suspect, but today, after searching dozens of leads, they're once again looking into Valentine.
We have not ruled out Shane Valentine as a suspect. We are still looking at him as a person of interest in this case.
Connie is convinced people Sydney once thought of as her friends are keeping quiet.
They're very bad people, and they create destruction all around them.
In the meantime, these signs are a reminder she doesn't want this case to go cold.
For them to ever think that they can stop looking over their shoulder or thinking that they're going to get away with this, they'll never ever get away with this.
And the family is convinced that somebody out there knows something. If you have any information on this case, call police.
3 years ago, the murder of the 21-year-old young woman and her boyfriend shook the valley. As the anniversary death of Sydney Land approaches, her family ramps up their efforts with billboards to drum up leads to solve the case.
It's been surreal. You watch a show of a murdered family, that's lost a child, and you're like, I couldn't imagine what they've gone through. And then I quickly realize I'm that family. We are that family.
3 years later, a family who's endured unspeakable loss and pain still has no answers. Who killed their daughter, 21-year-old Sydney Land?
The more we dig, the more we find. And after 3 years of working tirelessly, we are no closer to the truth.
Mother Connie Land and her family hope numerous billboards up across the valley offering a reward and asking the public for tips may provide a crucial lead.
Why is there no persons of interest at this time? And so there's a lot of questions.
October 2016, 21-year-old Sydney and her boyfriend, 20-year-old Neo Kauffman, were found shot to death in their apartment. Despite calls for answers throughout the years, there's still no suspects. Years later, Connie's frustration grows at the lack of suspects. She hopes someone out there with information who sees this billboard can help crack the case.
But what I want is the truth, so we can get to the truth that the right people that did this are caught.
Metro Police do tell Fox 5 they wouldn't comment on the status of the case, and they're still investigating.
Tonight, it's been 4 years since the murder of Sydney Land. Her family is pushing for answers in the unsolved case. They held a demonstration outside Metro headquarters today, and her mother, Connie, is determined to get justice.
I'm not going to allow this to get swept under the rug. I'm not going to allow this case to be forgotten.
Well, Sydney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman were gunned down inside their apartment near Wallapai and Peace Way. 4 years later, there is still no motive and no suspects. Frustration and disappointment, that's how the family of Sydney Land says they're dealing with the resignation of Las Vegas judge Andress-Tobiasson. Thanks for joining us live on TV, Roku, or wherever you're streaming us right now. I'm Trisha Keene.
And I'm Ty Quinones. Well, the judge was about to go on trial for some ethics charges. Now, she was being accused of improperly involving herself in the Land murder investigation. And 13 Action News reporter Jeremy Chen right now is live at the Regional Justice Center with a reaction from Sydney's mother and also what the judge is now saying. Jeremy.
Yeah, Todd and Trish, Judge Tobiasson has served on the bench for more than a decade, but starting this week, she'll become a former judge when she officially resigns. She says she made the decision and felt it was the best for her family. However, for the family of Connie Land, the mother says she's trying to avoid accountability.
Under fire for alleged ethics violations, Las Vegas Judge Melanie Tobiasson is resigning from the bench instead of fighting those charges. It all stems from allegedly being improperly involved in the double murder investigation of Sydney Land and Neil Kauffman back in October 2016. Sydney's mother, Connie Land, is frustrated by the development.
Her resignation is just a confirmation of her guilt. And to me, that's an acknowledgement without saying so.
The original complaint for the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline accused Judge Tobiasson of trying to get confidential information about the double murder from detectives and threatened a person of interest in the case. In a deal struck with the Nevada Commission, in exchange for her resignation, Judge Tobiasson's upcoming ethics trial would be dropped. Connie Land says she's not surprised.
That was her easy way of getting away with having to answer some very difficult questions that would have been asked in a hearing.
Speaking over the phone, Judge Tobiasson says the decision was not rash and she is at peace with it. She didn't want the ethics investigation to cloud over her family or her work as a Las Vegas judge. The judge says the ethics complaints painted her as a criminal and felt that portrayal was grossly inaccurate. Judge Tobiasson says she was committed to her job as a judge in upholding the law and fairness to all.
The killer and/or killers of Sydney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman remain at large. Nothing is off the table until this case is solved with the arrest and prosecution of those involved. I will have more on the unsolved murders in upcoming episodes, including new information never before released. With October 27th quickly approaching, I want to extend my condolences once again to the families of Sydney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman for their loss. Now, I will give the last word to Connie Land.
She said it was her and her daughter that were supposed to be killed. She's never once explained to me why my daughter was shot point blank in the face and it was supposed to be her and her daughter. You don't make those accusations. You don't go on record and say something like that and then shut your mouth and run away like a coward like she is. She knew she was going to get raked over the coals in that hearing, and she is such a spineless, gutless person that she skated away and she thinks she's going to get away with that. You know what's so funny? She used to tell me, Connie, you better have the backbone to fight this fight. Oh, she has no idea who she's up against when she hit me. When she starts making accusations like this, she tells me the police have evidence. They're destroying evidence. I'm being followed. She was the target. My daughter. I buried my daughter. She got the bullet in the face. She's the one that had the slow death. And the judge doesn't have the balls to explain herself. How dare she? I will fight till my last breath to get that out of her.